try. I'm all out of gold. I just need relief. They constantly. I'm 20 years old. I have this baby. You know, we're starting our life together. I'm totally engulfed in motherhood. And, you know, she was my only focus for some years until she can speak and walk and talk and everything. I never went out. I never partied, none of that. And I believe that, you know, it gave me sort of like a desire to experience that a little bit. So, you know, once she was old enough and I found people I could trust to watch her and things like that, I would, you know, go out and party and stuff. And the trend continued. It was all fine and good. This is what young people do. I'm like 23, 24, and this is what I was doing for the first time, like experiencing, you know, my adulthood and things like that. And I'm a mom now, so, you know, I was conscious of, you know, exposing her to things. So she never really seen any of the guys I ever talked to or anything like that. But the trend kind of continued. I had people that I had been friends with for years and years that I would, you know, you know, we had our friends with benefits type of thing. Her dad would linger a little bit around the holidays. And then I would meet other people. But, you know, over the next few years, it was basically like I'm still trying to find some type of, and this is all subconscious when I'm saying I'm still trying to find. I'm not literally thinking to myself, I need to find somebody to love me. I need to find somebody that's going to think that I'm worth it. And no, these are things that are subconsciously happening because something had grown inside my spirit that caused me from when I was little to think that these things that I was being picked on about made me unworthy and invaluable. Carrying that. So, you know, it's happening and happening and happening. And, you know, I'm finding a guy, he ain't. And I talked to several people, and I ended up being in relationships with a few people from then on, and nothing ever really worked out. And by the time I think I was like 24 or 25, I had met a guy, and I was just, I, the thing about it is, looking back, I really like, there's like, the thing that God puts in women and young ladies, there's like this feeling you get inside your chest. It kind of burns when a red flag comes up about somebody. And it's intuition. He gives it to us naturally. Men have it too, but women being the bearers of life, and you know, that's a whole nother subject. He gave that to us, and it's a bit more intense because we're more emotional, we're more sensitive, we are more likely to be moldable, if that I can't find the right word I'm trying to say. So here I am. I find this, you know, I'm dating this guy, you know, we're messing around and stuff, and you know, but before I met him, I had a bit of a spiritual encounter. No, it was after. So I met him, and we're going together, and we're partying and everything together. But you know, I kind of knew that he was messing with other people too, which was cool because so was I. When I say so was I, what I mean is it wasn't long after, you know, my little flings. But I only would mess with one person at a time. So it's not like, I was bound to him. It was just like, you know, that was who I was with at the time. And it's not like I was bound to him because, it would be, it wasn't, like a solid thing. I guess that's how I can put it. So I'm messing around with him and everything. And, I think I ended up with bacterial vaginosis. And I thought, it was bad. I was scared to go to the doctors. I ended up going to urgent care and, getting medication. The medication made me very sick. But I let it go for like, I want to say like a week before I went to get seen because I was just so scared because I didn't know what it was. Now I go to urgent care and everything and get the medication. I'm relieved, but before I go to urgent care that entire week, I used to work at a gas station, and that entire week I was I was so scared. I thought I had herpes. Like it was just inflamed and like it was bad. And I'm just like, being raised the way I was raised, something deep in my heart was just like, pray, 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 pray. And I was like begging God. I was like, God, please don't let this be what it is, anticipating going to the doctors. Please don't let this be what I think it is. And I'm writing him letters. And, this was the start of me kind of like journaling and like prayer journaling. So working at this gas station, they had like all of these little pieces of paper like ripped up and stuff, like, cut into like little pieces that were like, you could write notes on it for the next person and stuff like that. And I just sat there, when I got done with all my tasks, and I just sat there and I just remember writing on these papers and just praying to God and begging him that God, I will not, making promises to him and, begging him, to make it all right. And I knew I shouldn't have did it. And So I'm doing all this. I go to urgent care. They say they say is BV. Boom. Get my medication. Take my medication. Medication made me sick. But mentally, I had gone through so much with this situation that I'm just like, this can't happen no more. Like, I at least knew that I wanted to not just deal with people anymore. So, mind you, I made, these heavy, heavy promises to God. So now I'm celibate. That scared me so much that I became celibate, which I never really had an issue with, but, it was what it was. Became celibate, conscious of it. I'm like, I know this was God. I know, it was meant to lead me to this place where I'm not giving that up anymore, because now I'm an adult. I have more understanding. The things that stuck spiritually with me, even from being younger, they're still there, but they have intensified. And I know that, praying and everything and, making the promise to God that I was not going to go there with men no more. I was not going to have sex. I was not going to, I just wanted to get closer to him. And this is the journey that I was on. And when I say I had become instantly so fulfilled, when that situation was over, I just started seeking God. I just started praying so much more. And it was just like a light turned on inside of me. It was like joy. And joy is so much more real and more effortless than happiness could ever be. It's a spiritual. Joy is spiritual. I had joy. I felt that God was with me. I knew, he was happy with the promise that I made to him. And the whole time I'm celibate, and it had been several months, I was trying to just seek him and hold to my promises. And I remember, a new warehouse had opened up in my area, and I back then I jumped from job to job to job. Whoever was paying more, that's where I was going. So I still have these deep rooted things that haven't healed, but I'm experiencing what I'm positive is God's, deliverance from something I was so scared that I may have contracted. And here I'd have made a promise to him, not even really knowing the full weight of what that means. I wrote them down. Like it was doubled over, how solid this promise was. And I, like, in my mind, it was something that I knew I was going to keep. It was something that I knew I was going to hold up. So eventually, this new warehouse opens up, and I'm still in such a place, spiritually. I'm going places, and go work at this new warehouse. It took a while, but we started getting to know the people that came from out of town, to work there and teach us how to do whatever we was doing at the warehouse. Me and my cousin had went to work there together, and it was all fun. It was all enjoyable, and the work was light, barely any. And we end up making friends with certain people, and I had zero, and I'm talking about negative zero intention on ever getting into a relationship until I knew God was sending me my husband. So I'm starting to get friends with some of the girls and, some of the guys. And, we're planning little get-togethers where we can hang out or whatever. And end up meeting this guy. Ended up being, becoming friends with him. When I say it was so refreshing to have no intention and to know that this person didn't have any intention on any ulterior motive sexually or, nothing like that. It was so, like, my heart was just so glad to know that I could have friends and, and still hold true to my promise to God. Me and this guy became super, super good friends. Once we started to like have conversations, it was like we instantly discovered that we were both on a spiritual journey getting closer to God, and that was amazing, and it just drew us close. We would laugh. He was so funny to me. I can't really tell his perspective, but from my understanding, he had a girlfriend back home where he was from, which was cool. I wasn't trying to get with him. So for a while we really stayed friends. We talked every day after work, and it just was like it was so cool. We end up getting closer and closer, and you can kind of predict what happened. We end up getting closer and closer, and I guess there was a subconscious attraction, but at the forefront of my mind, there was no intention on doing or being anything but friends with this guy. But eventually, we ended up becoming more than friends, having sex, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, and I would try to convince him we should stop, and stuff like that, and it just not like it didn't happen. And when you do submit to God, he won't leave you there. But there's a scripture in Romans that says he will, if you keep insisting on certain things, he will give you over to it. Meaning, you have your will, he'll let you do what you want to do. Because at this point, I'm not realizing that those subconscious back in my mind thoughts of, oh my gosh, I made this promise to God, they were constant until they weren't. And I didn't know it was, God's warnings and stuff like that. I could have nipped it in the bud. I could have really been solid in my decision to stop and, just denied access and really got back on track. But I was really, 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 really falling in love with this guy. And we were friends, at this point we were friends and lovers. I just felt like he got me and I got him. When you click, you click. And I'm just like, there's something so special about this. was my thought process. I'm like, maybe he's my person. So we maybe were together for almost a year, and everything is everything. And, I end up getting pregnant.
In this life, the world will try and say what to feel, disguise it.